Once you've created an exam, the next step is figuring out how to give it. In this part, I'm covering 4 different tasks. First, installing the lockdown browser, which you're going to do and tell your students how to do. The second is how to give a practice quiz in class. The third is giving a formal exam in class, which is actually pretty much the same thing as doing the practice quiz. And finally, how to grade the exam in Canvas. Okay, so to install the lockdown browser from Respondus, which is the software company, you have to go to the main OSU search box and search for using Respondus lockdown browser. That's the easiest way I have found to have it pop up. You also can go directly from the ODE Resource Center if you can find it. I have a hard time with that. When you get to this page, then you can scroll down, and this is what you should tell your students to do, is to scroll down and to read all those instructions. There's lots of good advice. But you have to scroll down to find the link for individual installations. If you haven't put Lockdown Browser on your computer, this is obviously where you do it as well. You click on the link and you go to the page where it says Install Now, and then it will take over and it will give you the various instructions to install it. It's important to note that this link that's in the Canvas site on ODE is designed specifically for OSU. Okay, Respondus is installed. Let us go further and create a practice quiz that requires the Respondus lockdown browser. You do that exactly the way I've instructed in the first part of this series to how to create an exam. For the settings, I recommend that you have it be just a very quick practice quiz for the in-class, like 5 minutes. Open it up to an unlimited number of attempts, and you want to do that because if the student is absent and you keep the exam open, they'll be able to do this at home. So you could be able to check to see that everyone has at least tried the practice quiz and knows that they can take the exam. Open the quiz for the day you want to have the students take it in class, and again, make it available until the night before the in-class exam. I recommend that you create 1 or 2 questions that are typical of the kind that you give on your exams. Essay, short answer, multiple choice, fill in the blank. That allows a student to see what they look like on the screen and make them easy to answer. This is not a test. So here's the instructions that I provide to the students. I present these in class, I post them on Canvas, I send them in an email to students, and I include them in the text box for instructions for the practice quiz. So there's a lot to cover here. But basically what this screen does, this information does, is go through what I just did. It tells the students to install the lockdown browser, and it tells the students what to prepare for before they do the practice quiz, and that they will go through the steps that I'm about to go through. This is what I show on the day of the quiz. Obviously, I'm telling them to get ready for the exam so that they can walk in on the day of the exam and they know exactly how it's going to work. So the first thing to do is make sure that the students are connected to OSU Wireless and not just to any of the other wireless services. It has to be the secure OSU Wireless. Tell them to close down all of their programs. If they don't, Respondus will do it for them, and that gets more complicated than it's worth. Start the lockdown browser. When prompted for the server, this is a crucial step, have them choose OSU Canvas. Then they log into Canvas, they click on quizzes in the menu on the left, and they choose the practice quiz. So it's fairly straightforward series of steps. I've already emphasized that choosing OSU Canvas when students see the Choose Server box is so important. This is actually what the Choose Server box looks like. It will pop up on their screen, and they have to scroll down to see the OSU Canvas option. When the student starts the quiz, an area up in the upper right will show, and it's extremely useful. It gives the students the full number of questions that they have to answer, and it provides navigation between them. In this particular case, there's only 2 questions, so that's fairly straightforward. If there are more than 10 questions, the question numbers show in a scroll down box, and students can access any question they want using that box. When a student has answered the question, a little green check mark shows that the question is complete. The other advantage here is that they have a timer that shows them how much time is remaining for them to take their exam. Do be aware that if a student comes late, it will in fact show that they have the full time to take the exam when they obviously do not. So you might have to help monitor them when it comes to their time. It has happened in other classes, not to me, I should emphasize this, while the exam is running, that a student may lose access to OSU Wireless and get switched to Wi-Fi at OSU. Don't panic. Really, seriously, don't panic. As long as the student has not actually submitted the exam, he or she can reconnect to OSU Wireless, log back in, and continue with the quiz or exam. The system will have saved the answers to questions that the student has not been in the middle of answering. So do tell them to save or to navigate away from their essay question occasionally, just to make sure that it gets saved. After submitting the quiz, the students get an immediate results report. In this case, my quiz had 2 questions. One was a multiple choice question, one was an essay question. The student did not answer either of the questions, so their current score was a 0. But it also shows that the fact that the essay question would not be immediately scored because it has to be graded by a human being. To see how students are doing during the quiz and after the quiz, or during the exam, where it's really helpful, from the main quiz page, click on Moderate this quiz. The Moderate quiz page shows all the students enrolled in the class. It shows the number of attempts they have made on, in this case, the quiz, the practice quiz I was doing in class. And it shows how fast they finished, what their automatically graded scores are, and it shows you absent students. These are the students that it's very helpful to nag, to tell them to take the practice quiz before they get into the classroom to make sure that they are ready to do it. During the exam itself, you can also monitor how students are doing in terms of their time. When students finish early, you can see how much time they actually took, and you can see their score of their machine graded questions. If you have chosen View Responses and Show Correct Answers on the setup page for the quiz, students will be able to access the details of their results. Do not enable this for the exam if you want to protect your questions. That is, the students will be able to see their results at any time, and so your questions will be out there. But it is helpful for practice questions so that students can, again, see how they're going to be graded. Essay questions will not be graded, obviously, but the multiple choice questions will show up either where students have gotten the correct answer, or it will show the answer that they chose and which answer is the correct answer. When you're ready to give the in-class exam, it is exactly the same as giving the practice quiz, except for telling the students to wait for the password and to remind them that you're not going to give out the password until they've put their notes away. I find it helpful to give the students a piece of scrap paper so that they can keep out a pen and pencil for using that to do an essay outline or to make any reminders about questions they need to go back to. It's also very helpful to, as soon as the exam is over, to create a new password for your exam. That's an extra security step so that if, for some reason you have left the exam window open longer than you meant to, students outside of class will not be able to access the exam. So the students have finished taking the exam and you want to grade them, or your grader needs to grade them, either way. From the main page of the quiz, go to Speed Grader. Note that you can check out, when you get to Speed Grader, you'll look at an exam by one of the students, and you can see how the machine grades any of the objective questions that you give. I have several multiple choice questions just to get the factual material out on the table. And I use multiple selection questions several times. Please note that the system will give partial credit for multiple selection questions. So in this case, students will get 2/3 of 2 points, or 1.33 points for the answers that they chose. When you are ready to grade the essay questions, the procedure is very straightforward. You'll open the question and you'll see that there is an assign points box. So you just fill in the number of points you think is appropriate for the answer, and you add comments at the bottom. Now, students will not see the answers to their essay questions unless you have allowed the students to see the results of the exam, which you might want to do. But what they will be able to see is any of the comments that you provide, and they will see that on their own results page. Now, I think it is actually very efficient and very helpful to grade text answers with a rubric. I've developed a rubric that I use for all of the essays in my classes. It basically covers a number of the basic things that I want students to be able to do or to show that they can do when they write an essay. And I adapt it either for out-of-class essays, which are very similar to the essay exam essays, and then there's also a version for the essay exam. The really good thing about this is that the feedback you can give is you can be very specific about various areas that you want to focus on. And all you need to do is click on a feedback box to choose it. This really reduces the number of times you have to repeat the same information from essay to essay when you are commenting on students' essay results. You can add individual comments for each category of the rubric. So for here example, I have overall historical argument flagged, and where there's that little green box under the points assigned, I could add specific comments if I felt that there was something I needed to add. You can also add individual comments to the comment box at the bottom, which is also very useful. There are lots of places to save these things. Save the exam grading in the little box, save your comments with submit, and update scores when you're finished with the looking at the whole exam. How do you use a rubric? How do you add a rubric? Well, you go to the main quiz menu, and at the top right, you'll see the little wheel, the settings button, and click on that, and a little box will pop up, and you will be able to add a rubric. What I highly recommend, once you have created a rubric, you can use it over and over and over again. So that's one of the other advantages for creating a really, really useful rubric, a really good one that you think will work for many different kinds of assignments. If you want to create a rubric from the beginning using this box, please be aware that you need to fill out all of the criteria and the ratings and the points boxes before you click on the red button to create rubric. That's very confusing, but so it's important to know. The other important thing here is to give your rubric a title so that if you have more than one rubric in your Canvas collection, that you can tell them apart. So to create a rubric, you mouse over the squares under criteria and ratings, and you'll see a little pencil will pop up, and you click on that in order to edit the text in the box. You can increase the number of ratings. I use 5, as a matter of fact, by similarly mousing over the line between the boxes and clicking on it, and it will add another box. So creating rubrics is not necessarily intuitive. I highly recommend that you use the help box, the help function that's on your main Canvas menu, to go to the Canvas help area and type in for finding guides something like create a rubric or creating a rubric in a course. All of those instructions are very detailed, and they provide all the information you need to know if you're not familiar with creating rubrics from scratch. So I highly recommend that you take advantage of this function of Canvas to use them when grading exams. The student sees the feedback that is provided by the rubric on their results page, along with any of the comments that you've made about any of the criteria in the criteria boxes or the final comments. So as you can see here, it was possible to provide pretty detailed and helpful, I think, information for the student on how well they did on their essay question. Another advantage to doing all this in Canvas is that the grades are automatically added to the gradebook. If you want to see how your whole class did, you can look at quiz statistics, and it provides you with a bar graph of the distribution of your scores. Also, when you look at quiz statistics, it will show you, for your objective questions, some data that allows you to improve those questions, like the discrimination index.